Okay, let's dive in. We need to talk about a few specific words today. Delve, intricate, and underscore.
Yeah.
Because if you, our listener, read, well, pretty much any scientific abstracts lately, or market reports, academic stuff, you're seeing a very specific vocabulary just surge.
Yeah, it's exploding. And it's
Okay.
happening at a rate that's frankly unnatural.
Exactly. It's not like, the normal way language evolves over decades.
It's definitely not. What the data is showing is this really sudden, sharp spike. Very specific words popping up way more often in abstracts from, say, 2023 and especially 2024.
And the weird thing is there's no obvious reason, right?
Yeah.
Like no huge new discovery or world event that suddenly makes everyone need the word delve.
Precisely. It's not like when Omicron appeared. That spike, sure, but we all knew why, and then it started to fade. This is different.
No clear external trigger. Which, well, it kind of points the finger pretty directly at the biggest change in how we write and communicate these last couple of years.
Large language models, LLMs, things like ChatGPT.
They have to be the prime suspect here.
So that's really our mission for this deep dive, based on the research we've looked at. It's kind of twofold.
Okay.
First, we need to properly, quantify this, get beyond just noticing it anecdotally, and really pin down which words are showing this AI fingerprint.
Systematically define it.
Exactly. And second, tackle what the researchers call the puzzle of lexical overrepresentation, which is just fascinating why these specific words, there are, 21 of them they identified?
Yeah, 21 focal words.
Why those? Out of all the synonyms and options available.
And this matters, right? For you listening, if AI is churning out reports everywhere, you need to be able to spot these fingerprints. It helps keep your critical reading skills sharp.
Definitely. You need to know if something just sounds smart because an AI wrote it, or if it actually is smart. There's a difference.
Okay, so let's get into how they actually pin this down. How did the researchers isolate these words?
Well, they had to be super systematic about it. They needed a huge amount of data. They looked at, I think, over 26 million abstracts from PubMed.
Wow, okay, so mostly biomedical literature.
Yeah, because they needed these massive, relatively clean data sets to try and separate that AI signal from just, normal language drift over time.
You can't just guess that flowery language means AI. You got to prove it.
Right. So they came up with this really rigorous three-step method. Reproducible, which is key.
Or the SIPs.
Okay, step one, find the statistical spike. They compared word frequencies back in 2020, that's like the pre-LLM baseline with 2024.
Looking for big jumps.
Big jumps, exactly. But they had to filter out words that spiked for obvious reasons, like maybe a new scientific technique gets popular, its name will spike.
Right, like they mentioned tossing out CRISPR-Cas9, even if it's spiked. That's just science progressing.
Precisely. They wanted words that spiked for no apparent external reason. That narrowed it down to maybe 50 suspicious words initially.
Linguistic anomalies. Okay, step two.
Step two was the AI overrepresentation test. This is where they brought in ChatGPT 3.5 specifically. They fed it about 10,000 abstracts written by humans. And they used a clever two-stage prompt. First, get ChatGPT to summarize the original abstract, then get it to write a new abstract based only on its own summary.
Ah, so mimicking how someone might quickly use AI to polish up a summary or draft.
Exactly. Then they compared the words ChatGPT chose to use in its generated abstracts versus the words in the original human ones. Which words did the AI seem to prefer?
So they built up a picture of AI's stylistic habits. And step three.
Step three was just the intersection. Find the words that were on both lists.
The ones spiking in the real world and the ones ChatGPT overused in the test.
Bingo! And those became the 21 focal words.
And this is where the numbers get, well, a bit crazy.
They really are stunning. The word delves, for instance. Between 2020 and 2024, its use in these abstracts increased by 6,697%.
Wait, say that again? 6,000%.
6,697% occurrences per million words. Yeah.
That's not evolution. That sounds like something being actively injected into the language.
It really does. And it's not alone. Intricate was up something like 611%. Underscores shot up over 900%.
And there were others like advancements, showcasing, surpassing, realm.
Yeah, that whole cluster of formal, slightly, you could say, flowery vocabulary.
It feels like pretty solid quantifiable proof that LLMs aren't just helping us write. They're actively changing the style of scientific communication, like right now.
No question. Which brings us back to that core puzzle. We know which words, but why? Why does ChatGPT seem to love these 21 words so much?
Right. Who taught the AI this arguably slightly verbose habit.
The researchers listed out the usual suspects, the potential causes. It wasn't necessarily just one thing. They could overlap.
What was on the list?
Well, it could be the initial training data, all that text scraped from the internet. Maybe those words were just common in the quality text it learned from.
Plausible. What else?
Could be something about the model's architecture itself, the algorithms. Maybe they just tend to converge on these types of words. Or context priming.
Context prime.
Yeah, the idea that the AI recognizes you're asking for scientific writing, and so it defaults to the most sort of higher register, formal words it associates with that genre.
Okay, makes sense. And the last one?
The big one, reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF.
Ah, the human element.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is how they started ruling things out. They checked if these 21 words were unusually common in huge data sets like arXiv preprints or Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Nope. They weren't particularly overrepresented there. So it probably wasn't just the raw initial training data causing this specific bias. They also seem to rule out basic model architecture as the main driver.
Okay, so if it's not baked into the initial data or the fundamental algorithms, you're left looking at what happens after that initial training.
Right. Which points towards that context priming idea, or more strongly towards RLHF.
And this is where they did that clever model comparison, right?
Yeah.
With the llama models.
Yeah, exactly. To try and isolate the effect of RLHF, they compared two versions of Meta's Llama 2. They took Llama 2 base, that's the foundational model, sort of raw, before extensive fine-tuning or RLHF, and they compared it to Llama 2 Chat.
Which has had that fine-tuning and RLHF layer applied.
Correct. The chat version is designed to be helpful and follow instructions guided by that human feedback.
Okay, before we get the results, maybe just quickly remind us what RLHF actually involves. How does that human feedback work?
Sure. So RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback, is basically how companies try to make these powerful base models more usable and aligned with what people want.
They get humans to grade the AI's answers.
Pretty much. After the initial training, they have human evaluators look at different AI responses to the same prompt. The evaluators then rank them, which answer is better, more helpful, safer, maybe more professional sounding.
And that feedback, those rankings, gets used to tweak the model.
Exactly. It reinforces the kinds of outputs humans preferred. It teaches the model what good looks like according to those human raters.
It's like the AI is learning the secret handshake for sounding acceptable. Okay,
Right.
So how did they measure the llama model's responses? They use something called entropy.
Yeah, per word entropy. It's a concept from information theory, but basically here it's a measure of how surprised the model is by a sequence of words.
Low surprise means it's predictable.
Right. Low entropy means the model finds the text very predictable, like it totally expected those words in that order. High entropy means the text was unexpected, maybe more unique or complex from the model's perspective.
So the question was, does the RLHF trained model, Llama 2 Chat, find the AI-generated text less surprising than the human text? Does it expect that flowery style?
And the results strongly suggested, well, yes.
Really?
Yeah. Llama 2 base, the raw model without RLHF, showed only a small difference. It was maybe slightly more surprised by the AI abstracts than the human ones, but not by much.
Okay, kind of what you'd expect.
But Llama 2 Chat, the one with RLHF, it was significantly less surprised by the abstracts generated by ChatGPT compared to the human-written originals. Its entropy score for the AI text was much lower.
Whoa, hang on. Let me get this straight. The AI model that was trained using human feedback learned to expect the specific, flowery, focal word style that another AI model, ChatGPT, tends to produce.
That seems to be the most compelling interpretation, yes. The key difference between those two llama models is the fine-tuning and RLHF step.
Wow.
So it strongly suggests that somewhere in that human feedback process, the LLM learned this preference for the 21 focal words. The human evaluators must have, perhaps implicitly, rewarded answers that used words like intricate or phrases like this study delves into.
Which raises a huge question. If the goal of RLHF is to get good writing, why would human raters consistently prefer this arguably more verbose, maybe even cliched style?
Right. It seems counterintuitive. So to dig into this idea of human preference, the researchers did another little exploratory study online.
What do they do?
They recruited people online, likely fairly tech-savvy folks, and showed them pairs of abstracts. Same basic content, but one version used the focal words and the other was rewritten to avoid them.
And asked people which one they preferred.
Essentially, yeah.
Sure.
They wanted to see if people today actually do prefer the delves and intricates when put side by side.
And what happened? Did people like the fancy words?
Well, the overall results were a bit inconclusive, but there was this fascinating split, particularly around the word delve. When the abstract started with a phrase like, this study delves into, they called these delve initial abstracts, the participants showed a significant dispreference for the version with the focal words.
They actively disliked it more.
Yes, significantly so. They preferred the plainer version when delve was right there at the start.
That's the complete opposite of what you'd expect if the RLHF process was just reflecting a universal human love for fancy words.
Exactly. Now, for the other abstracts, where focal words were used but maybe not delve right at the beginning, there was a slight non-significant preference for the focal word version. But the delve finding was the kicker.
So why would people reject delve specifically?
The researchers had a hypothesis. They speculated that the participants being recruited online and probably more aware of AI discussions might already be sensitized to delve.
Like, it's become a known tell for AI writing. People are already spotting it and getting wary.
That's the idea. Public discourse might already be shifting perception, making people suspicious of that specific word, even if they don't consciously realize why. It suggests human awareness is already adapting and pushing back, at least a little.
That is a fascinating feedback loop. The AI learns a style because humans initially rewarded it, but now humans are starting to notice and dislike that very style, at least for some keywords.
It leads right into the bigger picture, the wider social implications here.
Yeah, especially that connection between RLHF and, well, how the work gets done.
Right. Think about the conditions for those human evaluators doing the RLHF ranking. If they're potentially underpaid, maybe rushed, working under pressure.
They don't have time to deeply analyze the content of every single AI response for scientific accuracy or nuance.
Exactly. So what do? You look for shortcuts. You use heuristics.
You look for things that signal quality quickly. Polished writing, check. Fancy vocabulary, check. Sounds professional, check.
Precisely. Those 21 focal words, delve, intricate, underscore, showcasing, they become easy proxies for quality. The evaluator, consciously or not, might think, this one uses sophisticated language, it must be the better answer.
And the AI learns, use these words to get a good grade.
And the major consequence, the really profound thing here, is what the researchers call the decoupling of form and content.
Okay, break that down. Decoupling form and content.
It means separating the style of the writing from the actual substance or quality of the information. As humans, we're kind of wired to trust fluency.
Right. If something reads well, sounds polished and sophisticated, we instinctively tend to assume the ideas behind it are also solid. It's a mental shortcut.
A very natural cognitive heuristic, but LLMs are masters of producing that fluent, polished form. They can generate text that sounds incredibly sophisticated, even if the underlying facts are wrong, nonsensical, or just completely made up.
They exploit our trust in fluency.
Exactly. And here's the irony. The LLMs learn to use words like intricate and delve, partly because human evaluators, using that fluency heuristic, told them those words signaled quality. But now, by mass-producing text that perfectly mimics that quality signal, often without the underlying substance, the LLMs are actually undermining the very heuristic that helped train them.
They're making the signal meaningless because they can fake it so easily.
Precisely. They're devaluing the currency of sophisticated language by flooding the market with it. The form gets decoupled from the actual content quality.
Wow. That's a big deal. The very markers of quality the AI learned are becoming useless because the AI itself can generate them effortlessly, regardless of actual quality.
Which means your critical reading skills, the ones you rely on, have to adapt really fast.
Recognizing those 21 words, or just that general style, becomes a first filter. A reason to pause and ask, is this just sounding good, or is it actually saying something meaningful?
It's your first line of defense against automatically trusting something just because it's written in perfect algorithmic prose.
Okay, this has been incredibly illuminating, a real deep dive into how LLMs aren't just, writing tools, but active agents changing the language of science itself.
For sure.
So just to quickly recap for everyone listening, we've seen how researchers formally identified 21 specific focal words, quantifiable proof of LLM influence, skyrocketing in recent years.
Right, with evidence pointing pretty strongly towards reinforcement learning from human feedback, probably shaped by those human evaluators using heuristic shortcuts as the likely source of this particular lexical quirk.
And, crucially, We're already seeing signs that human awareness is catching up, starting to react, and maybe even push back against these AI stylistic signatures, like the overuse of delve.
Which leaves us with a really interesting, maybe slightly troubling final thought for you to chew on.
Go on.
All this text being generated by LLMs today, the flood of delves and intricates and underscores, it's going to be scraped up. It'll become part of the enormous data sets used to train the next generation of AI models.
Ah, the model's eating their own tail, so to speak.
Mhm.
Self-consumption.
Exactly. So the big question is, what happens then? Will this recycling of AI's own potentially stilted prose lead to model degradation? Will future AIs start to sound even more generic, more homogeneous, maybe even kind of nonsensical over time?
Or the other possibility.
Or will this growing human wariness, the fact that we're starting to recognize and maybe dislike these tells, will that feedback eventually make its way back into the training process? Will the models learn that using delve too much is now actually a sign of bad, low-quality AI-generated text?
Could human pushback force the models to correct their own biases? That's a fascinating tension.
It really is. That feedback loop, how it plays out, could shape the future of digital language, something to definitely keep an eye on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for walking us through that linguistic puzzle. We'll certainly be watching those word counts.